Nobody even looked twice at that horse. It stood in the corner of the stable like it didn't matter, weak, dirty, and called useless by everyone who passed by. The owner had already decided. No one wanted it, no one believed it had any value left. People laughed when they heard it was still alive. That one. It won't last another week, they said. But then something changed. One quiet morning, when the wind was still and everyone had stopped watching, that same horse lifted its head, took a slow step forward, and did something no one ever expected. Something that didn't just shock the stable owner, but brought tears to the eyes of people who had already given up on it forever. Before this story continues, don't forget to subscribe, like this video, share it, and press the bell icon for more emotional true stories like this. The story begins in a small, struggling rural stable on the edge of a quiet town where life feels slow, heavy, and unforgiving. Dust rises from the ground every time the wind moves through the wooden fences, and the sound of horses shifting in their stalls echoes like distant whispers of a forgotten place. Among all the strong, healthy, and well-trained horses that attract attention from buyers and visitors, there is one that stands apart, but not in the way anyone would admire. It is old, weak, and visibly injured, standing in silence as if it has accepted that it no longer belongs anywhere. Its coat has lost all shine, hanging dull and lifeless under the fading sunlight that barely reaches its corner of the stable. Every movement it makes seems slow and heavy, as though even lifting its head requires effort. There are marks of past injuries on its body, some healed poorly, others still visible, telling a silent story of pain that no one has bothered to understand. It does not neigh loudly like the others, nor does it show excitement when people approach. Instead, it simply stands there, as if waiting for something that never comes. The stable owner sees it as nothing more than a burden. In front of others, he casually refers to it as useless, a word that slowly becomes attached to the horse like a permanent label. Visitors who arrive to buy horses for riding, farming, or racing barely glance in its direction. Their eyes pass over it quickly, as if it is part of the background rather than a living creature. They are drawn to the stronger horses, those with energy, speed, and pride, while this one is ignored so completely that it almost becomes invisible. Even the workers, who spend their days cleaning, feeding, and training the animals, avoid giving it attention. They believe there is no point in wasting time on something that has no future. When food is distributed, it is often placed last in its trough. When grooming is done, it is skipped or done carelessly. Slowly, without anyone openly deciding it, the horse is pushed into isolation. It becomes the one no one chooses, no one speaks about, and no one expects anything from. It stays in the farthest corner of the stable, where light barely reaches and shadows remain longer than anywhere else. There, it stands for hours, sometimes staring at the empty wall, sometimes lowering its head as if lost in memories no one can see. Other horses around it are active, energetic, and responsive to human voices, but this one remains distant, as if it has disconnected itself from everything happening around it. Yet, beneath this silence, there is a faint hint of something deeper. Small details suggest that this horse was not always like this. The way it occasionally reacts to certain sounds, or the way its eyes briefly change when a specific tone is heard, suggests that it once had training, discipline, and maybe even greatness. But something happened, something painful or tragic, that changed its entire path. No one in the stable seems to know the full truth anymore, and over time, even curiosity about its past has faded away. Among all this neglect, there is only one person who occasionally notices it. A young caretaker or worker, struggling with their own life, sometimes pauses when passing by. At first, they see it just like everyone else sees it, as broken, weak, and forgotten. But over time, small moments begin to make them hesitate. The quiet way it endures suffering, the absence of aggression despite mistreatment, and the strange calmness in its eyes begin to create confusion in their mind. Still, surrounded by constant voices calling it worthless, even this caretaker slowly starts to accept the same belief that everyone else holds, that the horse has no value left. And so, the stable continues its routine, the world continues to ignore it, and the horse remains where it has been placed, forgotten, unwanted, and reduced to something no one believes can ever matter again. The days that follow bring a heavier silence to the stable, as if even the walls have started to feel the pressure of what is coming. One afternoon, the stable owner gathers the workers together with a tone that leaves no room for discussion. His decision is final. The old, injured horse has become too expensive to maintain, and there is no practical reason to keep feeding something that brings no profit. His words are blunt, almost cold, as he announces that the horse will either be sold at the lowest price possible or sent away entirely. To him, it is nothing more than a business choice. For the workers, the reaction is mixed but shallow. Some simply shrug, already used to the idea that animals come and go depending on their usefulness. Others feel a slight discomfort but say nothing, choosing silence over involvement. In a place where survival depends on obedience and routine, speaking up for a useless horse feels unnecessary, even foolish. The decision hangs in the air like dust, visible for a moment, then ignored as everyone returns to their tasks. But something changes in the stable after that announcement. The atmosphere becomes heavier, almost unsettled. The horse, though still quiet, seems to sense it. Its behavior begins to shift in subtle but noticeable ways. It no longer reacts when people pass by. Where it once occasionally lifted its head or followed movement with tired eyes, now it stands completely still, as if it has withdrawn even further from the world around it. Even the smallest signs of life in it begin to fade into stillness. There are moments when it refuses food, leaving its portion untouched in the trough. It is not hunger that controls it, but something deeper, an instinctive awareness that something is changing. It no longer fights for attention, no longer waits for kindness. It simply exists, quietly absorbing the growing certainty that its time in the stable is coming to an end. The other horses continue their routines without concern, but this one seems to drift further away from everything, both physically and emotionally. Among all this, the young caretaker begins to feel a strange discomfort. Unlike others who have accepted the horse's fate without question, they start noticing things they had ignored before. Small details begin to stand out in a way they cannot easily dismiss. There is a moment when the horse is accidentally touched too harshly by a worker, yet it does not react with aggression. It does not strike back or show anger. Instead, it simply endures it, as if pain has become something normal to it. Another time, when the caretaker quietly approaches and offers a small gesture of kindness, perhaps a soft touch or a calm presence, the horse responds differently. It does not step away immediately. There is a slight pause, a hesitation, as if it is trying to remember what gentleness feels like. In that brief moment, something fragile appears in its behavior, something that suggests it has not completely given up on connection. The most striking detail, however, lies in its eyes. They are no longer just empty or lifeless as others describe them. Instead, they carry something deeper, sadness layered over endurance, as if the horse has seen too much but still remembers too much. It is not the blank stare of something without feeling, but the quiet expression of something that once understood life more fully and has since been forced to forget how to show it. Yet despite these observations, nothing around it changes. The world has already made its decision. The label of useless remains stronger than any silent sign of life or emotion. The caretaker's thoughts remain unspoken, buried under the weight of practicality and fear of being dismissed like the horse itself. Soon, the stable owner finalizes arrangements with a buyer. The man who arrives is not interested in care or understanding, only in cheap labor and physical strength that can be used without concern for condition or history. He looks at the horse not as a living being, but as a tool that might still serve some purpose in harsh work. As the deal is prepared, the future of the horse becomes darker and more uncertain. There is no promise of comfort, no sign of compassion, only the quiet certainty that it is being passed from one form of neglect to another. And in the middle of it all, the horse remains still, unaware or perhaps resigned, as its world slowly narrows into something even more hopeless than before. The night arrives slowly, as if even time itself is reluctant to move forward. The stable, usually filled with movement and noise during the day, is now almost completely silent. Most of the workers have left, and only the faint presence of animals and distant wind remains. Outside, the sky is dark and heavy, with clouds covering the moon, allowing only thin shadows to stretch across the wooden structure. The wind slips through gaps in the stable walls, creating soft creaking sounds that echo like whispers in an empty room. Inside, the atmosphere feels different, heavier, colder, and emotionally charged, as if something unspoken is hanging in the air. The horses are mostly still, some lying down, others standing quietly in their stalls. But in the far corner, the old horse remains tied alone, separated from the rest. Its rope is short, its space narrow, and its presence almost forgotten even by the night itself. It stands motionless, head slightly lowered, as though it has accepted the silence around it as its final companion. The young caretaker, unable to find rest, lies awake thinking about the announcement from earlier. Something about it refuses to settle in their mind. The idea of the horse being taken away does not feel like a simple decision anymore. It feels heavier, more final, like something being erased rather than moved. After struggling with their thoughts, they finally get up and quietly walk toward the stable, guided by an emotion they cannot fully explain. As they step inside, the familiar smell of wood, hay, and animal surrounds them, but tonight it feels different. Their eyes slowly adjust to the darkness, and they find themselves looking toward the corner where the horse stands. For the first time, they do not see what others have always described, a useless animal. Instead, they see something quieter, something that feels worn down by life but still undeniably present. There is exhaustion in its posture, but also a fragile sense of existence that refuses to disappear completely. The caretaker walks closer, slowly and carefully, as if afraid that even sound might disturb something delicate. When they finally reach the horse, they do not speak immediately. There is a long silence between them, filled only by the soft breathing of the animal and the faint rustle of wind outside. In that silence, something changes inside the caretaker. The labels, the judgments, the repeated words of useless begin to feel distant, almost meaningless. Without fully thinking, the caretaker sits down beside the horse. It is an unusual moment, human and animal sharing space without command, expectation, or purpose. Just presence. Just silence. The horse does not move away. It does not react with fear or resistance. It simply remains still, as if aware that something different is happening but unsure how to respond to it. After a few moments, the caretaker gently reaches out and loosens the rope around the horse's neck. It is not fully freed, but for a brief moment, the pressure is removed. The horse does not run. It does not panic. Instead, something remarkable happens. It lowers its head slowly, almost softly, as if it is experiencing calmness for the first time in a long while. The tension in its body seems to ease, even if only slightly. In that quiet exchange, something unspoken passes between them. The caretaker watches closely, feeling a wave of emotion they cannot easily control. There is sadness, regret, and confusion all mixed together. And then, barely above a whisper, they speak words that seem to carry everything they have been holding inside. Maybe you were never useless. Maybe no one just understood you. The moment those words are spoken, the horse reacts in a subtle but powerful way. Its ears shift slightly, picking up the sound. Its breathing changes, becoming deeper and more noticeable. It does not move, but something in its expression feels different, like a faint awareness has been awakened inside it. As if, for the first time, it is being seen not as an object, but as something that once had meaning. For a brief moment, the stillness of the stable feels alive in a different way. There is no chaos, no judgment, only a shared presence between two beings who, in that instant, seem to understand each other without needing language. But the night does not stop for emotions. Time continues forward, indifferent. Slowly, the caretaker stands again, their heart heavy with something they cannot fully express. The horse remains in the corner, quieter than before, but no longer completely distant. Outside, the wind grows stronger. Morning is still far away, but its arrival is certain. And with it, the decision already made will be carried out, no matter what has been felt in this single, fragile night. Morning arrives with an unusual stillness, as if the world itself is unsure of what it is about to witness. The sky is pale and cold, and the first light spreads slowly across the stable yard, revealing dust hanging in the air and faint hoofprints from days of movement. People begin to gather casually, without excitement or expectation. For them, this is not an event, it is just another transaction, another routine ending that carries no emotional weight. The buyer arrives with a confident attitude, walking as though he already knows the outcome. He barely looks around, his interest focused only on what he came for. Behind him, the stable owner follows, holding a sense of finality in his expression, ready to complete a decision already made. Workers stand nearby, watching without emotion, while the young caretaker stays slightly apart, silent and uneasy, carrying the weight of last night in their mind. Then the horse is brought out. It moves slowly at first, guided forward without resistance. Its body appears even weaker than before, as if the night has drained whatever remaining energy it had left. Its head hangs low, its steps unsteady, and for a moment it looks like it has completely surrendered to its fate. To everyone watching, there is nothing remarkable about it anymore, only an animal that has reached the end of its usefulness. The buyer lets out a small laugh, almost dismissive. He glances at the horse and shakes his head slightly, unimpressed. In his eyes, there is nothing worth considering, nothing that suggests value or potential. The stable owner prepares to confirm the deal, already mentally moving on. The atmosphere feels dull, predictable, and emotionally empty. But then something unexpected breaks the pattern. As the horse is led a few steps forward, it suddenly stops. The movement is not forced or panicked. It is deliberate. Its hooves press into the ground, and for the first time that morning, it refuses to continue without reason. The rope tightens slightly, but there is no struggle. Instead, there is stillness, an unusual, focused stillness that catches the attention of those nearby. The caretaker stands a short distance away, watching closely but not intervening. Something inside them tightens, as if they can sense a change before anyone else does. The horse slowly lifts its head. It is not an aggressive motion. There is no fear, no confusion. Instead, there is something unexpected: focus. A quiet, steady awareness that seems to return after being absent for so long. Its eyes, once described as empty, now appear sharper, more present, as if recognizing something or someone in the crowd. Then, without warning, it responds. A small movement from the caretaker, a subtle gesture, or perhaps a barely audible sound, triggers a reaction. The horse shifts slightly, turning its attention in that direction. It is not dramatic at first, but it is unmistakable. The connection is there, fragile but real. Slowly, the horse begins to move again. But this time, the movement is different. It is not weak or uncertain. There is control in each step, a kind of balance that surprises those watching. Its posture begins to change. The lowered head rises slightly, the body aligns more steadily, and the hesitation that defined it moments ago starts to disappear. People around the stable begin to notice. At first, it is confusion. Then curiosity. Conversations stop. Even the buyer's expression changes as he watches more carefully. The casual energy of the moment fades, replaced by something uncertain and unexpected. The horse continues moving, responding again to subtle cues, its awareness growing more visible with each second. It is no longer the lifeless creature they expected to see. Something has shifted within it, something that cannot be explained by appearance alone. The atmosphere transforms quickly. What was once boredom becomes curiosity. What was dismissal becomes confusion. And then, slowly, confusion turns into shock. The stable is no longer just a place of sale and routine. It has become the center of something no one anticipated. And in the middle of it all, the horse stands differently now, no longer fitting the story everyone had already written for it. What happens next freezes the entire stable in a silence so deep it feels unnatural, as if even sound has refused to move. The horse, once dismissed as weak and broken, suddenly steps forward with a presence that no one recognizes anymore. There is a shift in its energy, no longer uncertain, no longer fading, but steady, controlled, and powerful in a way that contradicts everything people believed about it. In a single moment, it begins to demonstrate something extraordinary. It could be a skill long forgotten by everyone except the horse itself. Its movements become precise, almost rhythmic, as if responding to an invisible language only it and the caretaker understand. Each step is intentional, balanced, and surprisingly elegant. The way it moves suggests discipline, training, and intelligence that had been hidden beneath years of neglect. The crowd watches as the horse executes a controlled run, not wild or chaotic, but perfectly aligned, as though it remembers exactly who it once was. Some people try to speak, but their voices fail to come out. The stable that was filled with casual indifference only moments ago is now completely silent. The air feels heavier, charged with disbelief. The buyer, who earlier laughed with confidence, now stands still with a confused expression that slowly turns into shock. He takes a step back without realizing it, unable to process what he is seeing. The horse he dismissed so easily is no longer the same creature. The stable owner, who had confidently labeled it useless, is also frozen. His face tightens as realization begins to form. This is not random behavior. This is not luck. This is something real, something he failed to see. For the first time, Doubt replaces certainty in his expression. The horse continues, responding again with precision. A subtle movement from the caretaker draws its attention, and it reacts immediately, showing awareness and connection that no one else seems to understand. It is not just performing, it is communicating in its own way, proving that it has been listening, observing, and remembering all along. Then something even more powerful happens. A sudden moment arises where the caretaker steps slightly forward, and the horse instinctively shifts its position, not away, but closer. It does not show fear or hesitation. Instead, it stands still beside them, as if acknowledging trust that was built in silence rather than words. The connection between them becomes visible to everyone watching. It is not ownership. It is not control. It is understanding. At that moment, something changes in the eyes of the people around them. The shock slowly transforms into realization. The narrative they had believed for so long begins to collapse. The idea that this horse was useless no longer makes sense. It was never about lack of value. It was about lack of recognition, lack of patience, and lack of understanding. Emotion rises in unexpected ways. Someone in the crowd lowers their head. Another person quietly exhales, unable to hide what they feel. Even the most indifferent workers begin to look uncomfortable, as if they are witnessing a truth they ignored for too long. The caretaker, overwhelmed by everything unfolding, takes a slow step closer, and the horse remains still, calm, and present beside them. There is no more fear, no more rejection, only presence. And in that presence, something unspoken becomes clear to everyone. The decision that was once final no longer feels valid. The buyer steps back, unwilling to proceed. The stable owner says nothing, unable to justify what he sees in front of him. The idea of selling or discarding the horse dissolves in the face of undeniable truth. The horse is no longer seen as worthless. It is no longer defined by its past or its appearance. It stands there as something far more complex, something that was misjudged, overlooked, and abandoned too early. In the quiet that follows, a final realization settles over the entire scene, heavy and unforgettable. Sometimes the world does not recognize value when it is alive in front of them. Sometimes it only understands it when it is almost too late.